Hi guys, I'm Benny from Kamui Cosplay. In our last video, Svetlana showed you how she made the Sombra gun from Overwatch just using simple EVA foam, so click here to watch the video. Today, however, I wanted to show you how I painted the gun just using my airbrush. But Benny, an airbrush, doesn't that cost a lot of money? No, actually it doesn't. The set I use only costs about 80 bucks and I use it a lot. Oh wow, that's so cheap! Yeah, no shit! This video will be just a quick introduction, but if you want to learn even more, don't forget to check out our advanced painting book. You'll find the link in the description below. Yay, advertising! And now let's start the video. Okay, so this is the airbrush set I was talking about. It had a compressor and a double-action airbrush pistol. And here is how it works. First you put in some color. Then you close the lid. Now you push the trigger to get the air flowing. And pull it back to get the color going as well. If you drag it just a little, you'll only get a light application. But if you drag it a lot, you'll also get a lot of color. Get really close and you can draw very fine lines, and get far away to cover some large areas. Just start combining all of these techniques and you'll get really interesting results. The only downside of working with an airbrush is that you have to clean it every time you change the color. I usually just put back any color I have left on the pot, fill in some airbrush cleaner and use a small brush to clean everything. But now let's start working on Sombra's weapon. To protect Svetlana's EVA build, we first had to cover it in Plasti-Dip. Heat it up with some hot water to get a really nice application. Svetlana shook the can and tested it out on a scrap of foam. Next she applied a couple of layers to the gun. And the key is to apply it thick enough, but not so much that it starts dripping. She tried to get into every nook and cranny and also covered all the individual parts. When it dried out, it provides a really nice and shiny protective coat. And now it was my turn. My first step was to look at the reference and try out some colors that would fit. Starting with the dark parts, I grabbed some silver and used an old bristle brush for some dry brushing. I applied some color to all the black parts. It looked really good so far, but later in this video you'll actually see that I toned it down again. Next I grabbed some green masking tape and covered all the areas that needed to stay dark. Then I took some gunmetal color and applied it to the still exposed areas. I also used a little bit of chrome color to dry brush in some metal texture. After this, I painted the side barrel in gold and covered all the finished areas in more tape. Shiny chrome was my next color. I just brushed it on the remaining areas. You can also use masking tape to cut out stencils. I used those to get the triangle shapes on the side with some darker color. The last step was to cover everything except the blue parts. I took the color I wanted and applied a base coat to all that was left over. Now I mixed in a few drops of black and brushed on some shadows. After this, I also used a brighter mixture and applied some highlights. Dry brushing worked great here to add some additional texture. All in all, I think the blue parts turned out great. And it was finally time to get rid of all the masking tape. Like I said earlier, I didn't really like how the dark parts turned out, so I took a brush and painted over them again. This already looked a lot better. Some more shading would be great, however. The awesome thing about masking is that you can do it as often as you want. So I took some gray and applied some highlights to my black parts, and also some shadows to my brighter parts. Next I took a fine brush, dipped it in my airbrush colors, and added even more highlights and shadows. Since Svetlana didn't bother to cut in real scratches, I also had to paint those on myself. The pink box on the side was also painted by hand. For the D.Va gun in our previous video, I painted on all the tiny details with a brush. This time, however, I wanted to use our vinyl cutter. So I grabbed the text from my blueprint, which you can find here by the way, and sent it over to our cutter. This machine isn't too expensive, but really helpful. You can use it to cut vinyl, iron on fabric applications and much more super fast. All I needed was some transfer foil and my fingernails to get the details over to our prop. It's fun to experiment with technologies like these, and the results look super clean. I like it. The details on the visor were also made this exact same way. Okay, next I glued on the visor with some contact cement and then went back to our spray booth again to cover everything with some satin spray varnish. A few coats will do the trick. For this weird reflective strip on the side, we actually used some golden foil and a piece of transpa art. I glued it on and cut it out. Then I used a brown alcohol-based marker to draw on some lines. Next I just glued the strip on and added a few final foam details on top. And just like this, the paint job was done. Hopefully this video showed you that working with an airbrush is actually super easy. If you still have questions, make sure to write them in the comments. And thank you again for subscribing. What, you haven't subscribed yet? Then click on this button right here. See you next time. Bye bye.